All right, all right, all right, all right. Welcome to this 27th episode of Warrior Week Parables from the Pit. My guest today is Brian Q. Davis. Brian, graduate of Warrior Week
38.
38. We're going to come back in a second shortly to the story of Brian Q. Davis, a very interesting and inspiring story. Stay with us.
That's who you are!
All right, man. So you came into Warrior Week 38. That was about 9 months ago?
That was in August.
August. Yeah, almost a year, man.
Well, oh yeah. I mean, heading that way. August 2017.
Okay. Talk to me about initially what actually brought you at the doors of Warrior knocking in.
Well, you may or may not recall it, but it was actually a year prior was our first conversation. I called you up, and I had seen the famous Garrett on a bridge in Vegas video, and it spoke to me because at the time I was producing and I'm in business to business B2B sales. Always been a top producer, but at this point I now had a wife. And I had a little baby, that month, about 6-7 months old. And I started to realize that something was off. Something wasn't working, clearly wasn't working. And when I heard this message of, hey, you can have your body on point, you can have your spirituality on point, you can have your marriage on point, and in business, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that that was something that I needed, and I needed to figure it out. So that was my first entry point, and we actually had an interview. It was short. Because of some other commitments at the time with my wife, I couldn't do Warrior Week, although I really wanted to. And so fast forward another 8 months and another baby. And I find myself in a serious pit.
Yep.
And right about that time, I see Warrior Book 600 come up. And so I got in with Warrior Book, came to WarriorCon 1, and then felt the call to go Warrior Certified Trainer.
So let's roll back about 18 months ago. This is when you and I first spoke, right? It's specifically 18 months ago, right?
Give or take, yeah.
Okay. Remind me of what we discussed, and I can probably remember what the fuck.
Well, it was just that conversation of like I just feel like I need to do what's working in my family wasn't working.
Talk to me about why you didn't come. Like what was the story that you were facing?
There was some commitment with my wife at the time that was overlapping the available Warrior Week.
On the time.
Yeah.
And then you let it go for a fucking year.
Yeah, I let it go for...
So really, the story wasn't that. Because if the story would have been that, and then you would have made it happen the next month or the following month, there would be crazy amount of follow-ups.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the only story at least you knew. But deep down inside, there was another story that was robbing you this opportunity.
Yeah.
You look back, it's like a year that was robbed away from a story.
Yeah.
A year. Now you come in after a year, you knock at the door because the pain is more alive.
Yes.
You can actually feel the fucking lighter on your asshole and it's burning.
Yeah, it was my second daughter.
Yes.
Was the catalyst. She was the catalyst, and where I found myself where it was my daughter Perry was born with bilateral club feet. So if you're familiar with club feet are the little baby's feet are turned in at like 90-degree angles when they're born.
Okay.
So, this was not something we knew about until she was born, and she was born, and we saw this, and it was like, okay, what does this mean? And it turns out you can get a therapy that takes you through it, and they end up being okay. But the process is you put the baby in these casts. And so 10 days old, you're taking this baby who has been happy the entire time. You put her in these casts, and it starts to pull her feet to the right angle. Well, the baby doesn't know what's going on, so the baby's crying for 48 hours straight. It's an emotional beating on my wife. And in that moment, I remember distinctly, I don't remember what happened. The baby's crying, my wife's crying. We're just, when we should be happy about the new baby, we're in fucking turmoil.
Yes.
And in that moment, I don't remember what exactly happened. There was some cross word, but I ended up snapping at my wife.
Got it.
And and that was the thing. I took a step back, and I was in another room, and I go, what the fuck? Like, what kind of man am I that I can't hold space from a mom of a new baby, and holy shit, something's got. And like about that time, Warrior.
So I tell you what kind of man you are. You are exactly the type of man that I am. That most of our viewers and the guys that actually listen to this conversation recognize, and the wives of the guys and the families that are listen to these podcasts because they want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear some masked up bullshit. They want to hear the truth about how men operate. Most of their wives will say, I recognize that motherfucker in my husband too. And the story is this, is there is just too many buckets of problems that we're carrying. And at one point, we're going to spill the fucking buckets. Because there's not enough hand holding them. I mean, you carry one in your right hand, left hand, maybe on top of your shoulder, on your head, one on your dick, if you're fortunate, whatever. And then at one point, where the fuck are you going to put the other buckets? And so at one point, you're also going to lose control. You can't carry all these buckets for a long time. Imagine all these buckets full of water, and you have to create the balance to make sure that the water doesn't fall off. So at the end of the day, there's so much that you can do. Now comes in an additional bucket into your life, which is supposed to be a bucket of happiness, and now it turns into a bucket of sadness because of the unknown. It's really anxiety. It's a bucket of fucking anxiety because it's the unknown. You don't know what the symptom is. You don't know what's going to happen. You're worried. You see the baby in that condition. Visually, it is fucking hurting both of you guys. The only place that you can go is a place of blame. And inside of that, somebody's going to fucking snap. And then you're left with what? Guilt and the shame of, God damn it, why would I act like this to a woman that carried this child? We are into this together, and like I have to be this. Like then the whole scenario starts about like building it up. So when you felt like that, you thought about Warrior immediately, or like what was it that linked you to Warrior?
No, it wasn't coincidence. It was providence. They like on Facebook, I see Warrior book, and I'm thinking, oh well, look, I wasn't able to go to Warrior Week. At least I can get the book.
Yes.
And I didn't realize what I was actually getting. I thought I was going to get this book. It was going to be cool, awesome. But then I got like this message. The next thing I know, I'm seeing you again, and like you're kicking this fucking head, dick, everywhere, man. Like I was like, what is going on? You're beating Bob up. I mean. And it turned into this whole experience, and it was before we even got a book, you know. And so it was a whole kind of over delivery, as you know, Warrior style. But it gave me a place to like at least have a shot at feeling like I had some kind of answers, or some kind of like hearing from other guys that are in the same spot, and I didn't feel alone. I mean, like in that moment when I'm snapping at my wife, all this shit's everything's coming apart. I felt alone, and I said, hey, well, at least there's other guys that are trying to sort this stuff out, and you know, this is a good place to be.
Okay, so beautiful. Inside of that, you come into Warrior, and there's a discovery that takes place. There's a discovery that takes place about a version of yourself, and that you're familiar with because it's you, but that has been dormant for a while. This guy that actually is able to share and tell the truth and like feel comfortable that in this place he can. It's actually safe to fucking fail. Like, hey man, I snapped on my wife is not encouraged, but it's not judged. It's like, okay, what happened?
Right.
What happened? What took you to it? Let's look at the source. Let's look at the source that was driving this problem, right? And so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
That conversation is what attracted you inside of the initial, as you came into Warrior Book and as you saw guys sharing. And what was the impact of just that short amount of experience? What was the impact on you, and what was the impact? Because I recall you had tremendous amount of impact in the first month just with Warrior Book and what you brought at home. So what was the impact of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I immediately started seeing changes in terms of just feeling more personal power. And that was where it was only upon feeling that power that I started to realize how long I had been operating at a deficiency of that power.
Yes.
And, you know, shortly thereafter was WarriorCon and this opportunity that opened up with Warrior Certified Trainer, and really not knowing what the hell any of it is, only knowing that it was very clear that that was the path, and away we went. But it was into the Warrior Week experience that like the real shift happened. I feel like everything up to that was pregame, and then that's when the game started.
So inside of Warrior Week, you come in and it completely unlocked the Brian that has been locked in for fucking years. Talk about the first night in the pit and really what built up to it, right? There was an emotional roller coaster you had to go through before you arrive at the pit. Talk about that and what had you discover at that point about yourself walking into the pit?
It's funny that you said locked, because that's the word you, like in my journal from our initial interview, that was the comment that you said. You said you're a locked dude. And so yeah, it was the beginning of the process of unlocking, and it was the process leading up to that forces you to go into the dark and like be able to feel confident you can do it because you're seeing other brothers do it too. And in that place, I uncovered things that I'd buried for years. I mean, I uncovered violation that had happened back in many years ago. Things that were guilt and shame that I had on my soul that I didn't realize I was carrying until I looked. They were totally buried. And it was only in that place and seeing other brothers do the same, and then going into Warrior Week that first night, going into the pit, and my memory from that was that in that darkest pit, it was actually Coach Jesse. And, Coach Jesse's a world-class trainer. But there was a moment within that he became a transformer, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And now with the training, I see what it was. But he said, there was a moment, and he said, "Hey man," like his voice changed, all the energy changed. He said, "Hey man, why don't you just be yourself?" It was literally that simple. And I realized that I was not being myself in a lot of ways because of this baggage, because it's things that you're carried around. And as a result, you can't be the best version of yourself for your wife. And then I started looking back, and post Warrior Week, I started the gift that I got the next day in Warrior Week was the revelation of what my family really is. And on the
so before going there, we're gonna come back to the first night.
Sure.
So the first night you have a look at yourself, right? And you look yourself in the fucking mirror, and that's essentially what happened.
Yes.
And you see a man that has a mask on. But then you also see a man that has put a fucking lock on the mask. And for some reason is knocking at the door at this experience called Warrior, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, and says, "Give me the fucking key. I want to open the lock of this goddamn fucking mask. I am too fucking tired. I don't want to live with a mask." So you keep fucking knocking at Warrior's door. "Give me the fucking keys." Most of your life, subconscious, like without even thinking, you have been looking for the keys on the outside. Now you come in and experience a very intense experience, condensed experience, face-to-face with yourself, with the man of the mask, and you see the fucking lock on the mask right here. You're like, okay, I open the lock, I can get rid of the fucking mask. Don't know where the fucking mask is. Back and forth, you go to Inquisition room, comes in Coach Jesse and tells you, "Hey man, why don't you be yourself?" And in that moment is when you realize that the key to the fucking lock has always been buried in yourself. Like you have the key. And that key is just being yourself. Being yourself opens the fucking lock and the mask falls.
Yes.
And there is Brian. Brian, the darkness, the light, his totality right in front of you and the world. You go to bed without the mask that night. Tomorrow you wake up and you go into the light. And then you got a gift on the mountain. So
Yes.
What was that? You were about to say that.
Yeah, so the gift that I got on that on the mountain was very, very clear. It was that my family is a divine gift. God doesn't need us to take care of our families. God can take care of our families. God gives us families to increase our capacity to hear him, is what I got. And how might we treat our families differently if we think of them as a gift versus a responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
That was the shift that I saw, because then I saw that my daughter, I would never have been able to go on the journey of where we are today if it hadn't been for my daughter Perry arriving and providing the challenge and providing the pain to force movement. And I now see that as God. That's God talking. And now I've looked for that in all aspects of my family, and listening to what my daughter says, or what my wife is saying. God speaks to men through their families, through even the challenges that they provide. And that was walking off that mountain was the realization that they're not my responsibility, they're my gift. And there's tremendous power in that, and they are all the power source that I need to dominate everywhere else.
Beautiful. You know, historians tell a story that there was a man walking in the desert alone, and that he stops and he asks God to take a walk with him. And so God says yes. And he walks and talks with God, carries on for a while, and then stops. God kind of vanishes, go on his way, and he's alone. He turns around and he looks, and there he sees footsteps. He only sees his own footstep. He doesn't see the footsteps of God. So he asked himself a question: was this an illusion? Was this a mirage? Am I hallucinating this? Was God really walking with me? And if so, how come I can't not see his footprints on the sand? And so he asks. He says, were you not with me when I was sharing my pain? I was talking to you and I was asking you, were you not my companion? Where are you? And so God said, yes, I was with you all along. The footsteps that you see are actually mine.
Yeah.
I was simply carrying you. And so I share that with you because, this is a story known that the historian has made this up, and whether it's true or not, it is true for me in the context of how I live my fucking life every single day and how I see you living your life, which is God does not need us to take care of our family. The family is a gift to us, not a fucking responsibility.
Yes.
Because the minute we think about it as a responsibility, it becomes a task. And having a family is above and beyond of having a task. It's a divine walk. And you're going to look and you're going to see that there's no other footprint, but there's one footprint. Sometimes it's yours, sometimes it's God's. When it's not yours, he's carrying you, period.
Yeah.
And when it's yours, it's because you're doing the goddamn fucking work.
Yeah.
So this is a perspective that men and father need to frame in their lives. This is not a religious frame. This is a frame of believers.
Yeah.
Believer in God.
Yes. Yeah, and if you think about that's a story. You hear that, you can almost hear that. It's almost like it should be on a Hallmark card. Your family's your responsibility. Like, that's imprinted into us. And it's never suggested that we don't deserve our families. If we got what we deserved, we get nothing. God says, hey, I'm going to give you your family, and it's an opportunity for you to A, hear me if you choose to listen, and B, it's an opportunity for you to be more, and to realize the full capacity of what I've created you to be as a man. And that's if you come away with anything from this podcast, that's part of the gift that I would want to give back to, and I give back to anybody that'll listen, this concept. And like I said, it was it's helped shape the way I treat and interact with my family and think about my family. And now my family is my biggest competitive weapon in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm going and I had it, my old way was I would spend time staying up all night, over preparing, working on 1,000 slides, shuttling the family aside and making date nights negotiable, like all this stuff. Like business first. Business would consume all of that, and I'm thinking that I was carrying it myself. And now I've moved to a place, and then sometimes it's hard, but I've moved to a place where I will say, no, you know what? My power for the big presentation tomorrow is going to come from my engagement with my wife, my time with my children, dinner tonight, prayer together. Whatever those things are going to prepare me to walk into that meeting tomorrow with power, as opposed to doing it myself and carrying the guilt of leaving them behind the day before into that meeting.
There is one single fucking thing that is the reason behind why everybody fucking over prepares and goes nuts around. Like, it's just as simple as that. Is the lack of certainty. If you are fucking certain about what the fuck you're going to talk about the next day, and you actually are going to talk about from a place of experience, not from a place of fucking theory, not from what the other market is doing. You study the marketplace and you're going to come in and repeat what the marketplace is doing. Fuck the marketplace. What are you doing inside of the marketplace, or what are you not doing inside of the marketplace? That's a story that's very simple.
Yeah.
You can put it on 100 PowerPoint presentation, or you can talk about hours about the truth about what you're doing in the marketplace and what you're not doing in the marketplace. That's it. I mean, that's the bottom of the presentation.
It is.
So you over-prepare for that because there's this lack of confidence and certainty in you. But when you find that certainty and confidence at home, then you can multiply that in your production areas.
Yes. That's the whole game. And that's the whole game. Is the average guy like me,
like me when I was in oil and gas.
Yeah, so same thing, right? You're traveling all the time.
I exchanged 250 days. I want you to fucking take a note on this.
Yeah. 250
days out of 350. I exchanged that for a story that says I'm going to provide for my family.
And it's
a fucking story.
It's a story that it's the same story I had. I've got to provide for my family. I got to hit my quota. I got to do, got to beat the competition, all this stuff. And it will completely consume 90% of your capacity if you let it. And that's where there's a war. There's a war for specifically really any businessman. But in my context, it's always been go out, be the producer. And that has all these different factors that come into it. But it's a war between that stuff and your certainty and capacity at home.
It's a paralyzing fucking war, bro. It has paralyzed America to his fucking knees. Like, this needs to be fucking told. We are the number one superpower right now in the world when it comes to our military, when it comes to our influence and our fucking power in the world. Like, we are literally the fucking superpower. Internally, we are the most fucked up country.
All you have to do is walk through an airport.
1. 2, just take a trip and go down to Europe just for fun. Not comparing anything, but you can see the difference. The culture is different. They actually give themselves more time during the day to address family. They come back for fucking siesta and they sleep. Most of us entrepreneurs would sit back and say, that's a dumbass motherfucker. He's going to be losing so much money while I'm going to be making some.
Yeah.
To some extent, that's the competitive nature at what we've built as a machine, as an industry, as services, and as well as infrastructure that no one can compete with.
Yeah.
But there is a fucking price that comes with that. And the price for that is sedated fucking fathers like me.
And me.
Like me. Sedated fucking father who exchange for a decade 250 days out a year for a story that says you're going to provide for your family.
And the guilt and shame that comes with that is
huge.
And that's why you end up with the sedation.
That is the
plague.
That is the guilt and shame is what paralyzes you.
Yeah.
And so you're left in this place of, well, what the fuck do I do, bro? Like, I want to be with my family, but I got to put food on the table too. So what the fuck you want me to do? You're sitting there in your fucking podcast and you're preaching this shit. Like, what the fuck you want me to do? Well, do whatever the fuck I did. Do whatever the fuck you did. That's the only place I can talk about. Like, do what we did, which we didn't do a miraculous fucking, it wasn't a miracle. We didn't do something out of ordinary. We said fuck you to the story. That's it. It started with that. When I actually left that industry, I just said fuck you to that industry and everybody in it. I literally said fuck you and everybody that look like you and everybody that fucking sound like you. Fuck you. I will not go back in the same fucking shithole that I just stepped out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what my next step was. I didn't know. You don't have to know everything. That's the problem.
Right.
People want security and certainty as long as they know. You're going to have the balls to walk into the dark, opening a fucking door and going inside, closing the door, not knowing where the fuck you are. You're going to have those skills. Or if you don't have it, then you're going to have to take the chance. Because deep down inside, all of us are being given a fucking gift. And that gift is in our heart. And that gift says, I am courage. And it's a God-given gift for you to use and give away. But when you lock it in and you don't use it, then you buy somebody else's fucking courage. You borrow somebody else's courage. And for years, you keep borrowing, not knowing that you have your own. You feel this?
I do.
Like, this is your story and my story are fucking similar.
Yes.
The fucking, you saw my video the other days. I get fucking triggered when I go into the airport. The airport environment triggers the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
Right now, today, when I saw you with that fucking thing, I was fucking triggered. Not at you, but at the bag.
Yeah.
The carry-on bag that you had. Because it straps up and you fucking, that was my life for 10 years.
Yeah.
I said, fuck you to that bag. And the life that bag brought. 10 years ago, I was proud of that bag. This bag has been to Africa, Russia, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, fucking Uganda, fucking Canada, you name it. So proud of this fucking bag because it traveled with me everywhere. What's the fucking point?
Well, you said it when you said it comes at tremendous cost. When I look back at where I was at that time, I was doing well. Top producer, company, like big sales, all that. And it was extremely expensive to operate that way. And where I'm sitting now is this mindset of, if I want power and dominance in the marketplace, I have to have not only myself invested in, I have to have my family. They are the source of my power. And within that conversation, God to me is speaking through them to me. And when I have those things, it doesn't matter because I can walk in anywhere and have impact. And it isn't about the fucking PowerPoint. It's about the power in the man.
So true.
And that is a rare commodity. The man in a marketplace, whenever you line up 5 different presentations, you have different people come in, the group or the man that comes in that has his family on point, supporting him, energetically with him, invested in, and he knows, like, he's got no guilt and shame for being there, and he's got his body on point. All those things are in where they should be. Him versus anybody else is no contest. It doesn't matter the product. And so, but it's a leap that until you get some personal certainty, most people won't do that. And that's where, I look back on my journey. It started with doing Core 4 and just doing the little work. And then it leads to bigger things. And now I'm to the point where, I could prepare for the 2 big presentations on Monday and Tuesday, but on a Sunday instead, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to just walk in there, and I'll just walk in there, and I'm just going to go with me.
One of the realities of our lives is that people get triggered by the word God. Whenever you say God, most people get triggered. And there are some motherfuckers right now that are triggered inside of this podcast as they hear you and me saying God. When you say God and when I say God, we understand each other.
Yep.
We're very clear. But when we hear some fucking dumbass on TV talking about and injecting God in everything, then, like, that's a different context. That's the context of religion.
Yeah.
Like, I get triggered by the word God in that context. I mean, I was watching a stupid thing that I shouldn't even fucking watch. But anyway, I watched it. It was this, like, lady on CNN that got thrown out. So she was a supporter of the president and President Trump. And she was like, well, this is a man that God has sent here and so on. But, you know, in the context of what she was talking about, I mean, it made sense. It was just logic. But then it took a spin of, like, one of those dumb people that keep inserting God in every conversation in hope that God will do the fucking work for them.
Right.
And again, imposing and forcing the idea of God onto everyone. Oh, Jesus is God. Lord is Jesus. The only way to salvation is through Jesus. That's it. Anything else doesn't fucking exist. I get triggered by that, man, because that's not fucking true. There is one God, and there's many paths to get to him. There was Jesus. There was Muhammad. There was Moses. There are many paths to get to God. And you can't sit and say, I will enforce this path. And if you are not on this path, then fuck you and the people that look like you.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that level of uncertainty.
Yes.
Right? So if you're starting with a place of uncertainty,
yes,
then that's where you go.
Because you borrowed your fucking courage from somebody that told you what God is, somebody that gave you the information of what God is. And I don't care what religion you come from, what background. It could be Muslim, Jew, Hindu, whatever the fuck you are. If you borrow the power from somebody else's frame and never give yourself to actually seek and ask that what if God would simply be in your heart and you could have access to him? What if you could actually walk with God and have a conversation with God? What if the fucking historians were fucking right that you can actually have a walk and talk with God? And you can do that every single morning for 2 minutes. What would your life look like? What would be the quality of your life?
So this is interesting. So let me share with you, before Warrior Week, or before Warrior, I had a good friend of mine who's a pastor, and he said something about a meeting with God, and I was getting triggered because I had all these meetings on my calendar and all this kind of stuff, and I said, you know what? And there was this sales meeting at Monday at 8:30, and it was a sales this meeting where everybody gets together and basically lies about what they're going to do this week.
Yes,
you know,
I know those.
We're going to have a quota. We're going to do this many calls. It's all bullshit. So I said, you know what? I'm not going. I'm going to set a meeting with God at 8:30 on Mondays. And this is the only thing that kept me going pre-Warrior Week. Pre-Warrior anything was this practice. And what I would do is I'd go and I'd schedule it in the calendar. You know, good thing about God is he shows up every single time. He's never late to the meeting. I would go to a cafe near my office, and I'd take out a journal. And on one hand, I would write, Dear God, thank you. And I would write down all the things I was thankful for, just whatever came to me. I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my children, the big things. And then once you start going, you start realizing there's all these other things to be thankful for as well. And you get all the way to the bottom. The next thing you know, you've got 2 pages. And then on the next page, I'd write, God, now I know you can, but will you? Help me with this sale. Help me close that. Very specific. Not ashamed to ask for very specific things. Protect my family. And, make my marriage on fire. Help me understand my wife. Whatever those things might be for you, and they were for me, I just would write them down. I'd get to the end. I'd look at both pages, consider both what I'm thankful for and what I'm asking for in confidence, because what I realized and where this idea came from was actually my daughter. And I realized that when my 2-year-old came to me and said, hey, Papa, will you read me this book? I felt honored. But if she never asked me, I don't know that she wants to read the book, and I don't get the honor of her asking me. And so I believe that we are God's children, and that God gives us the relationship with our children to give us an analogy of what it is like for him with us. And if you think about our children, we're honored when they come to us and ask us for things. And if it's things that they want and are good for them, I'm going to give it to them.
So true.
Maybe not right now, but if it's something bad for them, I say no. And maybe I kick and scream, but we just say no, or maybe not right now. But if it's anything other than that, I'm going to deliver it because my child came to me and asked. And so I said, well, I'm going to take that and bring it into business. And I started asking for deals. I started asking, help me with this, help me with that.
Yes.
You do this for 6 months and you look back and you go, my God, like all these things.
There's a traceability.
Oh, absolutely.
That is evident.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Meeting with God.
I called it my sales prayer meeting.
Yes. Meeting with God. But what a beautiful idea to meet God once a week, once a day, whatever. You actually schedule it in. You schedule it like, dude, here's the problem, right? We would fucking show up for any Tom, Dick, and Harry inside of the business world at the cost of everything.
Right.
At the cost of, number one, not taking a shower. Number two, rushing in the morning and really picking a fight with our wives and, treating our kids like shit. In the traffic at the cost of driving like a fucking maniac. In the traffic, on the road at the cost of pulling fingers and telling other citizens to go fuck themselves because you have a meeting at 6.
Right. Find
the fucking parking, get triggered, go all the way up, sweat, and your suit is already wet because you sweat, and you drag in the fucking bag, and now you plug in your laptop.
Been there.
It's not working. Wi-Fi is not working. Coffee spills on your fucking white shirt. So things get just worse and worse and worse. Despite all this shit, you're on time, 6 a.m. The guy comes in late, not comes up, whatever, or he shows up. The meeting goes, whatever. Just another fucking meeting.
Right.
Yeah, we will consider that. Let's set a meeting. Let's set another meeting to discuss about this meeting. That's the next step.
Right.
Or the most common next step is, we will discuss it internally and we will get back to you. Not.
Right.
And we do all this, and we show up for 6. All we have to do is 6 a.m., meeting with God. Take a shower, go downstairs in your room, sit in your room, open a journal. Begin the meeting at 6 a.m. You're on time, he's on time. One side, you write down what you're grateful. The other side, you ask. I know you can, but will you?
There you go.
Is the time right for you to guide me? Will you help me now? Can I get guidance from you? I seek guidance from you, right? Close the meeting and trace the meeting.
There you go. Just do it every week and do it for 6 months, and it'll shift your whole reality. And imagine the way that God feels.
Yeah.
When we go to and we have an analogy for that. Think of your child, if you're a father or a mother, and you think of your child coming to you and saying, hey, Mama, Papa, will you do this for me or help me with this? And, of course, we're not God, so sometimes we get frustrated and go, I don't have time.
Yes.
God never does that.
Sure.
And God, but in the moments where we have our mind right, we go, oh, that's so sweet.
Yes.
That's so nice. Of course, baby. Of course, baby. Yeah.
Now think about this. I want to use the same fucking analogy to make something very fucking clear. Think about your kids and my kids coming into us and praising us all the time. Dad, you're such a great dad. You're the greatest. You're such a great dad. You're the greatest. You're such a great dad. Every day, every day, every day, every day. And it sounds the same. Same and same and same and same. Number one, doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
Number two, you hear it so often that you actually you can't even hear it. So think about what we do is that we constantly praise and praise and praise, but we don't appreciate. All you did was said, thank you,
Thank
right?
you.
You don't have to read half a fucking Bible every morning. Here's the reality. He doesn't want to hear his own word. He's already put that in the scripture. It's out there. There's no point repeating his word back to him. He's the one that gave it to you. Motherfucker, take it. But ask in your own language, not in a man-made language that says you will only talk to God using these scriptures.
There you go.
Use your own language.
God.
Thank you for my family. That's simple.
Thank you and will you?
Thank you and will you.
That's it. I mean, and God is that simple. It's man that complicates God.
Man complicates God because man thinks that man need to be qualified sitting in front of God. Every goddamn fucking man, every human on this planet is qualified to have a relationship with God.
Yeah, amen.
And there is no other man that should actually take away that qualification from him. That's a sin by itself, if you want to call it.
There you go.
I mean, this doesn't need to get more complicated than what it is.
But this is what and I always think about this in terms of the work that Warrior is doing. You see it in the brothers, you see it in our units. That the reason the world does that is the world hates truth.
Yes.
The world hates light. The world, when light is brought into the world, there's a couple of things that will happen. Many will follow. Mm-hmm. Many will fight it because they don't want the light on them. They don't want the light to be there. And so, that this whole a religion is, in many cases, one of these things that is a perversion of what the reality is, and it is meant to dissuade, turn off, complicate, and distance.
It's fucking simple. It's like a glass of water, or empty glass, that is painted black on the outside, and then they put men inside. When the light shines, the light doesn't go through the fucking glass.
Yeah.
And yet, men claim that they are in light because they can see the light, but yet it doesn't shine upon them. And that serves a certain amount of people throughout history in all fucking religions, all religions. All religions. It has served a group of people. And organized religion actually served the interest of the fucking organizer.
Of course. At some point, it always does that. Because there's people involved.
Interest. And then from religion was born the idea of culture. Now, don't do this, don't do that, don't drink alcohol, all the cultural things that are man-made. All the rules that were man-made now pushed upon men to get triggered by God, to even hate to some extent these rules that take away the initial freedom that God has given all of us to be both light and dark. That's the freedom that we have. That's the gift that we have from God. And to refuse that there's no darkness in us and that we only carry the light, that's a man-made fucking story. And if you believe in that, you have another man's story in your fucking head. And you got a bigger problem than trying to be a better daddy or a better husband. What do you hear from this, man?
Well, again, I go back to that conversation about the war of bringing light into the world. And that starts with telling the truth. And I see it all the time. Anybody that tells the truth, again, it's set apart. I believe this is your quote, Coach Sam, is the most powerful man in any conversation is the one with the truth. And I think of that in terms of business. I mean, that makes it easy. You want to set yourself apart from the competition? Tell the fucking truth. That's that. There you go. That's it.
Simple.
Game over. But there's going to be people that hate you for that. And so that is the nature of being a light bearer, is that you are going to create followers and you're going to create enemies. But it starts with just telling the truth. And in the conversation of God, the truth is it's really simple.
Yes.
The lie is it's really complex. And I see that in terms of Warrior bringing men, having men say that I'm going to live by a code that says I'm going to tell the truth, that I am going to lead other men from a foundation of light, and that whenever I receive light, I have a liability to give it away.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you have to expect darkness to react to that.
Of course. Of course. Darkness is right now reacting to it. As you and I are speaking live from this studio, I don't know if you heard the sounds in the back.
Did.
Some fucking shit was happening. There was walls being banged or whatever. It's already manifesting in itself. It's manifesting right now through some listeners that are fucking triggered about this conversation by itself. And it's cultivating in them to project and judge. But the reality, the truth is being told. People say, yeah, that's your truth. No, that's not my truth. This is the truth right now. That God is one, and no man shall define the relationship between God and another man. Every man is a fucking leader to define their relationship with God. Every man is goddamn qualified to be in front of God and have a conversation with God. Every man is qualified to have a meeting with God.
There you go. Absolutely.
And then he will not actually deny your meeting. He's not too busy.
Exactly. So that's a challenge. If you're listening to this podcast, set yourself a meeting with God next week. Maybe this week, maybe tomorrow. Put it on your calendar. You know, I like making it a legit business meeting and saying, you know, there's no reason you can't ask God into your business. People always ask, well, I ask God into my family, ask God into my
Yes.
There's no reason you can't ask God to help you with that deal.
People feel guilty and shame if they do that because they're told you shouldn't use God for your own interest. Just use it for the interest of the organized organization. Go ahead and donate here.
Right.
So we can build another organized organization where we would tell the same fucking message.
There you go.
And by the way, if you fucked up, you can come here every Sunday and we will forgive you so you can give us more money the following week and go do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Well, that triggers something for me. Part of my story, Coach Sam, is that I grew up Catholic.
Yep.
Best altar boy on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Did every single checkbox. Never missed a catechism. And at 19, my mother got cancer and passed away. And during that time, I was all in that if I just prayed these number of prayers in this sequence,
Yes.
that she'll be okay.
Yes.
And she wasn't. And it was horrific. And it was a 11-month start to finish thing. And that really turned me. I was kind of a like go to hell God thing. I'm spiritual, not really. I'm out there. I'm not really. I don't know what God is anymore. Because the bargain didn't work. I had been brought up that it was a quid pro quo relationship. I do this, you do this for me, and relationship with God. And so 10 years basically spent kind of just in darkness. And it wasn't until I met my wife and she said, hey, here's another way. God made it easy for me through a really beautiful 5'8" brunette. And at that point, I was able to see that grace and relationship with God does not require anything because it's a gift. All it is a free gift. Our only thing we have to do is accept it.
Yes.
There's nothing we can do to earn it. There's nothing we can do to be good enough because we never will.
Yes.
And it comes back to the same conversations. Your family is a gift, so is grace is a gift. And it is only the guilt and shame and darkness that we let sit on us that prevents us from accepting it.
Yes.
Because we say, I'm not worthy. Because we think God is like us. We think, well, if I was me, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't feel like I'm worthy.
We'll project.
But God isn't that way.
No.
But
he's not us.
Yeah.
Period. That's the starting point. He's not us. And he says it. He says, I am that I am, and you will never be me. Like that's you believe in that, then it's the beginning. From there, like what you experienced is some call it test of life. I don't know what to call it, man. It's pain that I have not experienced that I can only imagine. But it's a dark period.
Here's what the gift out of that though was, Coach Sam, is that fast forward 20-something years, and what I have as a gift from that is I can remember and articulate the feeling of no faith and having faith.
Yes. Yes.
And so right now, my mother's contribution is going across this microphone into these podcasts.
Yes.
Because I was able to, I had this this period of darkness where I thought, again, that it was a bargaining relationship with God. That's not how it works. And I can't tell you that how much I feel for people that don't have that relationship of the free gift. Because if you don't have that, I don't know how you make it through most things.
And, we talk about organized religion, and we have to recognize men of God that are actually organizing a path for our children, for ourselves to begin to understand him. Because the worst thing that could happen to a child is never to get to know God during his childhood. Not knowing God during his childhood as an adult doesn't really make him a believer in anything. Like it's just, I don't know. I believe in movies,
right?
Whatever. But so we talk about organized religion, but there are divine people, priests, imams, rabbis. There are divine people that are on a mission to educate and provide information to understand and know God. The difference is those people will never be able to provide an encounterment of God to the students. And they know that. They actually know that. Something they can. Those are the corrupted one. Those are the wolves in the sheep clothing. But the actual divine men that simply provide information and guidance for you and I, as we grow up as kids, to get exposed to this concept, to know. And then as we grow up, we actually pursue a journey of not information, but a journey of encounter. I was fortunate enough to encounter at very young age, and it shifted me from that. Part of it is because I was guided initially. Because initially I was exposed to religion as a child, and I got to know God through what I was being educated to. So I'm forever grateful for that. I will never throw any stone at that. I'm forever grateful for that. And then I moved, and I was isolated. When we moved from my country and we moved here, like my parents were not practicing. There was no practice, nothing. It was me and me. There was nobody else. And at age of 12, I believe, there was the initial encounter in one of the podcasts. I told the story with Nick Long. There was an encounter with God. There was a simple encounter of me losing my keys and finding my keys to my house in the snow, walking on it, and that was like an actual proof that God came in and helped me. That shifted me forever. From ages of 9 till now, which is 41. I didn't go to any church. I didn't go to any mosque. I didn't there was no religious guidance, a guide for me. The only thing that kept me on the path of being a divine and a true believer of God is the initial encounter that took place. And so the encounters shift people and change them. Information can only guide them to a point. Most problem is most adults are still trapped inside of information. And the organized religions and the organizer know that they can profit for a bunch of dumb people that are actually stuck in the information. Like, motherfucker, you've been reading the scriptures for 30 fucking years. Well, you didn't have a fucking one encounter with God, not because God didn't want to have an encounter with you, because you never give yourself permission to have an encounter, a direct relationship. You've given all your fucking power to somebody else so that he can organize a fucking, an event for you where you can go on the stage and you can sing and pray. What about you? So the whole point of this is, I know you had encounters with God as well, and that's like your daughter is an encounter with God. And there's been many, but there's one that you shared with me just like an hour ago before coming into the studio, very briefly. And that was the following. It was a truly an encounter, and let you tell the story. The story is that you came to Warrior Week, and there was painful past that you had to deal with, and you dealt with that painful past. And then you came back to another Warrior Week, which was the certified edition, and you've you were talking to see and challenge yourself to see if this, this still in me, and you kind of realize it was, and you dealt with it. And then through another conversation with another brother, you were told to deal with this, bring this shit and talk to it about to your wife. And something happened in between all that story that I'll let you tell.
Yeah.
That was your encounter and the message that was given to God. So what was that, man?
Yeah, so part of this was the idea of accepting forgiveness, and this kind of goes back to underestimating God. Like you think, well, God can't forgive this or that or whatever, but God does, and like fully. And sometimes it takes a little bit for that to land, like really get it.
Yes.
And I had an experience where we were going to some men from the church I go to were going to a hunting thing out in West Texas, and we were going out there, and I had a feeling, just being in tune with, Scripture does say we don't struggle against the physical nature, we struggle against cosmic powers, and I felt that darkness coming on, and except the difference was here, I was no longer running from it, I was hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
I had the truth inside of me, and I had the forgiveness, and I just wanted to hunt whatever was left down and kill it. And so went out in this hunting event. It was a bunch of guys, but I chose to go alone one night and go into the hills of West Texas. It was rainy, it was dark, and I mean, in any other context would have been terrifying. And I was going out there with my mind. I had the idea that I needed to kill this like a hog. There were wild hogs out there, which can be a little bit dicey and dangerous. And I was out there and hunting, and in the dark, and it kept getting darker and darker and darker. And then I just said, I'm just going to submit to what I hear God's voice tell me.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sitting there, and I see some birds fly over, and I follow the birds to the right. I follow those birds. I see some birds to my other right, and I say, well, I'm going to go follow them. And then I hear something crash into some water off to the left. I follow it. I come back, and as I'm walking, I see something off to my right in the darkness. And I go over to it, and it's a hog's jawbone. Just one piece of bone laying there in the woods, in the darkness. This is in the middle of nowhere, West Texas. And I just consider it, and that's strange. And I move on, and I hear hogs in the bushes across the field. It's scary, but I have a mind of a hunter. I'm going to take this thing out. I want to kill it. I'm going to finish this thing forever. And I can't ever find anything. And so as I'm walking back out, I see the jawbone again, and I realize that's when, and I hear God as clear as day said, there's nothing left to hunt. There's just bones. And it was in that moment that I then was able to say, you know what? I'm free of the darkness. How can I turn this into light? And now I actually can. And that's the thing that I'm sure you've seen it, Coach Sam, where darkness always, we go to the pit, we find light, we bring it out, and then it's our duty to share it.
Yes.
And that is the cycle of the warrior, is a constant investigation into the darkness to find light and then come out and share it. And so this led to, I was working another event, another warrior brother, Sam Nider, and was able to use this experience to share this with some other men, and it made an impact.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, this darkness that had followed me for a long time was now transmuted into light for men that I didn't even know, and may do that through this podcast.
Yes.
And then I realized in the last few days that, there was one other person that I needed to bring light to, and that was my wife.
Yes.
And for the first time, felt I could walk there in no fear, and did. And, I would, just 48 hours ago, I felt the energy in our marriage shift dramatically through the vulnerability of those moments. And isn't it amazing how God works?
Yes.
And that's
You are the gift, and many gifts are given to you, but it's never yours to keep. Like, you're a constant gift, but it's not yours to keep. You have to give it away. And for you to find your gift is a constant inquiry into the darkness and finding the light. Most people go into the darkness not for inquiry. Most people go into the darkness not with the hunting mind. So they get consumed by the darkness and they stay there for years and never come back. When you go into the darkness as a hunter and you chase the light and you hunt the light, you come back with the light and you share it. And there's a constant flow because we have never arrived.
right.
And it's a constant flow. And if you say, no, I will refuse to go, you're basically saying, no, I'm going to stop giving away the gift that I could find so that I can actually start helping others. And so you started impacting others because of your own flow and your own experience. And now you're exchanging with the most expensive currency in the world, and that is impact. Impact is the most expensive currency in the world. If man exchanged impact, the world would be a fucking different place. Some do. Many don't. Money has no power. Money has zero power when the world operates based on an exchange of impact. But that's left to the historian to be written. Because many, many, many men want this. But there are too many men in the darkness fighting this.
So the blessing and curse is that once you have been there and been back and given the light, you can't not do it again.
Yes.
Like, you can't not do it again because you know there's another guy out there that was you.
Yes.
And he has a little baby. And he has a wife that he is not treating like he should. And so that's where I was having a conversation with another warrior brother, Mark McInerney, the other day, and we had this conversation about this hunter mindset of moving into a place where you're actually looking for more pits. I'm looking for caves to go into because now I've been trained and I know there's light in there always. So I'm going to go find a bigger pit. I'm going to go in there to find it because I know that I'll come out with light. I have the tools. I have the process. I have the love and support of the brotherhood. I can go into any pit, and I've got a man that will hold the other end of the rope for me as I go there. And that's where, you feel the power of this this movement. You feel the power of our units. You feel the power of the brothers. You feel the power of the tools and the process. And it gives you the ability to consistently go into dark places intentionally to bring back light, with the intent of sharing it with those that are in darkness.
And that becomes a mission. Such is the mission. This podcast was a mission. Your Warrior Week was a mission. Leaving this podcast, going to the restaurant, grabbing a bite is a mission. And the mission continues. And you are chosen for the mission. You can't really opt in for the mission. You are chosen. You are chosen, and there are many that are chosen for the mission. You have been chosen through a process. I don't know where and how, but when a man feels that he's actually is a messenger, he's actually someone that could carry impact and provide it to other people, then you have been chosen. You're a vessel, you're an instrument. And the voice God is, through you, creating impact for others. And such is the story of tonight, what you shared with thousands of men listening to this podcast, for being here. There's nothing else to tell. This is the end of the road, which is, I have found my purpose. For the first time ever, I have found my purpose. Now I have a purpose when I go to work. Doesn't matter what the fuck I do. I can be selling shoes or selling IT, or I could be just working as an engineer. I could clean bathrooms. It doesn't fucking matter. When a man has a purpose, the work is simply the work.
Yeah.
You're not a slave to the work.
And regardless of what the work is, there's no higher calling on the planet than the liberation of others that are in darkness with light.
True.
And that's what the game is about. So you can do that anywhere. You can do that selling shoes. You can do that here. Anywhere
it's possible. And if you're watching this podcast and this had slightest impact on you in your life, then you have a duty and responsibility to forward this to another man that may actually have also an impact in his life by listening to this. For more of these podcasts, you can find us at warriorweeknow.com. You'll find videos, audios, pictures, and additional content, media content around the podcast. You can also subscribe in iTunes and Google Play and follow further and more episodes of Warrior Week Parable from the Pits. Inside of this conversation with me and Brian, if you don't believe or you do not still believe in anything that we said here, I suggest you to do one thing, and that is, beside going to fuck yourself, there's actually some intelligent thing that I can tell you. I challenge you to set a meeting with God tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Set a meeting with God, or 6:30, whatever that time is, you set up the time. I challenge you to set up a meeting with God tomorrow at 6 a.m. and listen to what he has to say. Whatever he has to say, that's what you need to believe. Not us, not anybody else, but whatever you hear from him. Brian, thank you for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure having you here, man.
It was an honor, Coach. Thank you.
Have yourself a fantastic day, gentlemen.